My comedy didn't become political per se until I was, 22, 23. And then I started filtering in a little bit more each month to get a little more political until ultimately it infected, and I mean that in a good way, my entire act. And there was no turning back from that point.
You must be involved in the struggle for freedom and justice.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Waking Justice podcast. I'm Austin Haynes. Over the past 2 decades, comedian-writer LeeCamp has been building a career by dismantling the propaganda of our mainstream news. The festival of ignorance the corporate media uses to distract us from their unfettered profiteering has long ceased to be funny. But Lee's comedic insight is inspiring folks to fight back and fight smart. In fact, Lee's work was a huge inspiration for us to organize the Waking Justice Project. Here's Waking Justice Director Paul Berry interviewing Lee about his work. For info on this and more, head to wakingjustice.org. What matters is what is in common. If you know it, stand tall and keep dropping the knowledge. Justice is waking, justice is rising, and it ain't just us, it's all of us. If it's our love.
Our guest today is comedian, writer, and activist LeeCamp. Lee is the host of weekly comedy news show Redacted Tonight on the RT American Network, and he has also just released a brand new comedy special that we'll be talking about on the show today. Lee's work has been a key inspiration to the mission of our Waking Justice campaign. Welcome.
Thank you. That means a lot. And thank you for all the work you do.
Appreciate it, man. Could you please give us just a brief background on how you got started in comedy? Did you always want to be a comedian? How did that come about for you?
I wanted to write comedy as young as like 12. I started writing kind of on my own and writing for the high school literary mags and anywhere I could get to publish it. But I didn't really see myself as a performer. I'd never been on a stage. I wasn't really drawn to performance per se. But then about 16, 17, I started wanting to try stand-up. So I finally got on a stage right when I turned 18 and never looked back. I knew I wanted to be a stand-up comic from that point on. The whole time I was finishing college, I was thinking, I'm just going to be a comedian. I don't need to do this stuff. So I still did it. Went straight from there, moved to New York. My comedy didn't become political per se until I was, 22, 23. And then I started filtering in a little bit more each month to get a little more political until ultimately it infected, and I mean that in a good way, my entire act. And there was no turning back from that point.
Awesome. So how long have you been in it now?
20 years.
Wow, that's impressive. Good run, man.
Yeah.
So it's been about 5 years since your last comedy special, and your new comedy special is available for streaming now at LeeCampComedySpecial.com. I caught a sneak preview. It's fresh, funny, and fearless stuff, as expected. You take on the whole corporatocracy, big banks, big defense, big meat and dairy, big pharma, big media, fake news, and fake politics. Brave, brilliant stuff, brother. Is it true that the special is banned on corporate TV networks?
Well, it's true in a sense. I mean, no, I'm not getting letters from NBC saying, let me just tell you how much we're not having this on our network. That's not really how they ban things. They ban things in a quiet way. And I have been largely just ignored or sidelined by corporate media and corporate channels. So I know that my career in general is not allowed on those networks. It's why I'm on RT America, because it's one of the very few networks where you can speak out against the corporatocracy, speak out against big banks and big ag and big pharma and all the ones that fund your other networks. It is banned on American television in that sense, and that's why I self-produced it and putting it out only at LeeCampComedySpecial.com, because I know there's really nowhere else for it. You can get some freedom at certain places like Netflix, but Netflix isn't knocking down my door either. So
it reminds me of a clip of you on Fox News a long time ago. Your hair was very different, and it was hilarious, man.
Pay attention to what happens after it, just to show you the journalism we're discussing here.
All right, Julia and Lee, we appreciate it. And I'm sure you guys are going to have a lot more jokes for the rest of the campaign here. They just keep coming.
What? Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
What is Fox News? It's just a parade of propaganda, isn't it? It's just a festival of ignorance. What Why, 1 million people are dead in Iraq. Come on, this is ridiculous. What's the point of this? This is insane.
Well, I love
people
Fox
at home,
News.
go outside. Go hug your
Lee,
children.
you should be more.
Well, Fox
you should
News
be
will
more
be
worried.
Love your family, you know.
And you get all the news at
Hillary
Fox.
Clinton is running.
All the news you can at
Right.
Fox News. All right, thanks,
And
guys.
I think, okay.
All right, that's it. All right. We're also talking about Captain Kirk this morning. And hey, because it's Saturday morning, we're having some fun. Greg, you've got the pussiest job in the world.
Yeah, look who just beamed aboard right now. The ladies from the Starship Enterprise. Hello.
It is so good. You just disrupted the show and took on the interviewer. Have you been on corporate network news since that moment? That was an incredible moment.
Not really. You know, I've been on. I was on Fox News once. I was on CNN once. I was on MSNBC once.
I look at your list, though. I'm a little offended. I feel
Yeah,
like I feel.
You're the exception?
Well,
So almost all jokes have victims, have a victim in a way.
Never mind.
I was even on Al Jazeera once. I was on BBC once.
I think that we have some good talent. I just think that we've got an overexposure problem.
Is overexposure
No,
when people find out that you're
overexposure
wrong? Is
means
that what it
that-
is?
No,
Because basically they would have me on, realized I'm saying the things that are not really acceptable on your corporate airwaves, even at a network like Al Jazeera. And that was the end of it. With Fox News, it was a bit more explicit. They had me on, and I thought about just telling them to go to hell. But I figured, well, maybe this moment can be used for some good. And I went on and called them a parade of propaganda and a festival of ignorance and told everyone to turn their television sets off. And it's funny how when you go on a show and you tell everyone at home to stop watching it, they're not dying to have you back anytime soon. So, I didn't even know it'd go viral. This was before the time where everything was online. It was 2008. Not everything was instantly put online. It was Saturday morning at 7 a.m. I kind of figured, well, you know, some people might be upset about this, but how many people are really going to see it? And then it goes viral, it gets millions of views, uploaded everywhere. It's even used in documentaries, I think. Then my college touring career, which was where I was really making any kind of living from stand-up, because most stand-up gigs in New York City will give you $25 or something. My college touring career basically dried up over the following year because they would Google me. That would be the first thing they'd find. And colleges, interestingly enough, and this is a whole nother conversation, don't want to have political thought or political opinion at their campuses.
College has changed, man, since I was.
Yeah, I know.
Well, the comedy special was excellent. What was the URL again?
LeeCampComedySpecial.com. It's 25% off if you use the promo code Uncle Sam. The title of the special is Super Patriotic, Very Uncle Sam Comedy Special, not allowed on American TV. So promo code Uncle Sam, 25% off. I think you can stream it for $4.40 or something.
It's a great deal, and I know that you put it out there because you want folks to see it, but I also know that it helps you continue this work. So I hope that the folks listening will pick that video up and support you. In our show notes, we'll put your Patreon account.
And also 10% of the sales are going to Veterans for Peace and Food and Water Watch. So two great organizations.
So you make, what, a nickel off of each show, huh, Phil?
I know. Once I've paid all the directors and camera crew and everything, I'll make a nickel.
Oh, God bless you, brother. I caught the sneak preview. Thanks for letting me take a look at it. And I saw that the great Abby Martin of Empire Files introduced you to open the show. I caught up with Abby and asked her how the show went. And here's what she said. I want you to hear this. The things I love most about Lee is his ability to make us hysterically laugh while challenging our core paradigms. It's such a rare gift in comedy that comes around only once a generation or so, she says. When Abby introduced you, she told a funny story about hanging with you one time and meeting one of your fans. It seems she thinks you have a unique fan base.
Well, we had just been at Mike Papantonio's conference in Las Vegas. We're out drinking, about 7 of us or something. And we leave, the bar's like 2, 3 a.m. It's pretty late. We're headed back, and they're stopping for a smoke. And this guy comes running up to us, young guy, probably 30 or so. And he seems kind of frantic, and he goes, hey, can I just hang with you guys for a second? And we're like, yeah, sure. He's like, he's kind of changing his appearance. He's taking his jacket off, kind of ruffling his hair up. And we're like, what's going on? The cops are after me because I hand out flyers for the strip club in the casinos, and we're not allowed to do that. So, yeah, they know me, and they're chasing me right now. And we're like, yeah, sure, why not? You can hang out with us. And right then, he looks over and he goes, LeeCamp? Big fan, man.
I love it, man. You're big with the stripper club workers.
Yeah.
Of course you are. Well, to that point, there were a few audience shots in your special I noticed, and I was kind of stunned at how diverse the age and demographics are of your audience. Kelly Carlin, the daughter of the late, great George Carlin, she has said that you're keeping her dad's torch alive and that you're a thinking person's comic. How would you describe the fans who follow your work? What is it you think that you're doing that is resonating with them?
Yeah, that is one of the cool things is how diverse it is, especially when I'm in a diverse city like Los Angeles where I taped the special. It really is every different age. I mean, it definitely, I'd say, skews mainly over 25, but you can go from 25 to 70 or 80-year-olds will come out and, amazing grandmas who've been fighting against war their entire lives. And you'll see parents there with their 25-year-old kid. That's like, and then the number of times, it's kind of incredible, the number of times that a 25-year-old will come up to me with their parent and go, yeah, my dad turned me onto your stuff and I'd love it. They're half frustrated that the old guy knew what he was talking about.
So cool, man. That's you're really in a really sweet spot, man.
But what it is resonating, I think, is just, thinking outside of what we're given on our corporate airwaves. And I'd like to think that what unites all of my material is kind of an empathy for those who are exploited by our system, beaten down by our system. And, the underlying message is, if you are beaten down, it's by this system, by this unfettered capitalism that's crushing kind of everything. It's not your fault. We're in this fight to try and survive and sustain this environment together. You may feel like it's your fault because there's a lot of programming out there that's been told to say, hey, the personal responsibility, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But the truth is we have an entrenched class system that is meant to chew up, 70, 60% of us and spit them out through their entire lives. They're slaving at, a job they hate, maybe two jobs they hate to try and feed their kids and put a roof over their heads and everything. And so it's not the personal responsibility thing is a canard. It's a false argument that's designed to make people feel like crap for working their ass off and not becoming a millionaire. We're don't believe the lies. We're not all just temporarily not millionaires. That's not how it works. So that is what unites these audiences, people that want to see change and they realize that we're up against a massive force that is just enriching themselves while everything kind of comes crashing down around us.
Wow, right on. We're going to come back to the, everything coming crashing down around us. I'm a fan of yours, and a lot of us resonate around your integrity. You really are exactly who you are up there. And I think that matters because there's so many corporate comedians out there that are kind of working for the system, and they find a really nice slice to pull in, some nice slices of the left crowd or the progressive crowd or the alt-right even. People see that you're the real deal. Abby also said that you're a genuinely amazing, and I know you're modest, you're going to hate hearing this stuff, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So you're a genuinely amazing, down-to-earth, inspiring person who commits his existence to a better world. I think that's what's coming through. People believe in you. And Eleanor Goldfield shared some similar comments. Eleanor is the host of the weekly series Act Out on Free Speech TV, and she's your co-host on your podcast Common Censored, which I support and listen to every week. I love that program you guys are doing. You're doing great work there.
Thanks.
Yeah. Eleanor said, Lee's an inspiration both as a human being and an artist. The performer you see on stage is just as raw, jagged, and loud, and a louder version of the person he is off stage. and I love this, what she says. She says, Lee's work is a powerful and important mirror on the absurd. In your comedy special, you definitely confront the absurd, and I'd appreciate it if you could respond to some of the issues you raise in your show. I'd like to just run through a few of the questions that you asked the crowd. I'd like to hear your responses to them. In one instance, you asked, what's so advanced about advanced weaponry being used to kill thousands of people? What did you mean by that? Aren't those weapons protecting our freedom?
Yeah. We're bringing freedom to other countries. It's just on the tip of missiles. Even when we're watching a so-called debate about whether we should be bombing or not, CNN or whatever they'll pretend to have debates. And, it'll be a little panel and they'll have 5 people that think we have to bomb immediately and one person who says we shouldn't bomb. But even within those debates, they're staying within a certain narrow channel of allowable thought. No one is questioning kind of war in general. No one's questioning the larger military-industrial complex on those channels for the most part. And even the language they use is designed to make us think a certain way. You know, when they're saying, look at our advanced weaponry, well, you know, we've got very advanced missiles over there. And let me tell you, our targeting strategy, and whenever they're using these words, that's still impacting the thought of people that either haven't made up their mind, or even if you think of yourself as someone who wants peace, you're still using the terminology of war. So to call this weaponry advanced while we obliterate, you know, countless civilians, innocent civilians, you know, the numbers, according to the Lancet Medical Journal, the numbers in Iraq may be as high as 1 million people killed throughout our invasion there. Advanced, it's barbaric. We're obliterating societies that we're not at war with. Congress, which is supposed to declare war, does not declare war with these entities anymore, these countries anymore. It's basically just a unitary executive taking the gloves off of our military, and our military saying, let's try out these new toys we have. It's sick on so many levels. You know, we're not going in for the real reasons we say, and this terminology is a lot of what manufactures that consent. You know, it'd be, calling it advanced weaponry, as I say in the special, would be like walking into a pool hall, seeing two guys playing pool, and then one of them breaks the stick over the other guy's back. And you go, wow, that was a really advanced move. That was, you know, I've been playing for years, never could have come up with such an advanced technique. We're not even given the accurate reasons for why we're in these countries. It's all designed to manufacture consent. The truth is that it has to do with either weakening powerful entities in the Middle East that we think may threaten us or threaten Israel at some point. So we want to just bring down Syria. Another has to do with them dropping the American dollar, because we know that if the dollar is dropped as a reserve currency for a lot of the world, we are screwed economically. So any country that seems to drop the dollar suddenly gets mysteriously invaded for unrelated reasons. I mean, Libya dropped the dollar, or was talking about switching to the gold dinar, and they were invaded despite Gaddafi years prior being our friend and our buddy, and we paraded him around the world as the good guy for a couple of years until he started threatening our dollar and our central banking system. Same with Iraq, same with Iran, same with Syria. And, you know, my favorite one was Pakistan. This is under Trump. Trump been in office for, you know, I think a month at this point. Pakistan dropped the dollar in exchange with China whenever they were doing business with China. And within, I think, 12 hours, the U.S. added Pakistan to the list of countries that violate religious freedom.
Man.
So within hours, it just so happens that Pakistan just violates religious freedom within hours of dropping the dollar in trade with China. Funny how that works. That's an interesting kind of religion. Is it perhaps the religion of worshiping the almighty dollar? Is that the religion they're talking about?
No, shit, man. They didn't even try to hide it. It's so obvious, isn't it?
Oh, I know.
It's always about stealing oil to keep the dollar propped up, isn't it? There's an amazing video, I'm sure you've seen it, of General Wesley Clark, where he's talking about a memo he saw.
7 countries in 5 years.
Yes, God bless him for going out and putting that out to the public. But it was, you know, if you look at those countries, they're pretty much the ones you just rattled off.
Yeah, it's I've covered that on Redacted Tonight a couple of times, and people can go online and watch this, because Wesley Clark said it more than once on video during various panels on Democracy Now! And such, that he was in the Pentagon. He wasn't working there. I think he says he went to visit or meet with someone. And by the way, people should know General Wesley Clark, 4-star general, ran for president, also a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, not Mr. Lefty hippie anti-war activist. First of all, he was told that we needed to connect it to Iraq, as if Iraq had done it when there was no evidence of that. And secondly, he was told that it was part of a plan to invade 7 countries within 5 years. Basically, all the countries that we've either invaded or put sanctions on, like Iraq, Iran, Libya, Yemen, Syria. And the ones that we haven't invaded, we've subtly helped undermine them, even if it wasn't a full-on invasion. It was more just, you know, help make sure that they're knocked off at the knees.
Yeah, it's crazy. Have you ever tried to get him on your show?
No, I haven't. But, that's the interesting thing about him is Wesley Clark, sure, he doesn't consider himself a whistleblower. Unlike someone like, let's say, John Perkins, who has been a out-and-out whistleblower, an economic hitman, and what goes on with the World Bank and the IMF and the CIA and such. Wesley Clark ran for president as a Democrat. He's a pretty mainstream guy. He just felt like that moment was beyond the pale, and he needed to tell people about it. So it's an interesting case where it's not like he's some lefty running around writing books about how the deep state is under control and, out of control and running things. As far as I know, he's not really doing that.
Yeah, he's an enigma. Nobody refuted those statements he made, and it's amazing.
Interesting when insiders, I don't know if they've come to Jesus moment or whatever it's called, and they reveal something, and then they kind of realize that they've stepped beyond what's allowable for our, kind of corporate state, and they then kind of scurry back and try to get back in the good graces. Like Donna Brazile revealed that she was head of the DNC for a bit and very high up, and she revealed in her book and within the first couple of interviews about her book, she said, yes, the primary was financially, at least, rigged against Bernie Sanders. And she basically said, the Hillary campaign was money laundering, that all these donations that go to state parties would then get sent to the Hillary campaign as a form of money laundering. She revealed that. It seems like the weight of the DNC must have come crashing down on her, because within about a week, she was running around saying, I never said it was rigged. All I said. And everyone was kind of bewildered with how quickly she tried to backtrack on that.
Man, she had quite a year, didn't she? Donna Brazile. She also got caught as a CNN commentator sneaking debate questions to Hillary. Unbelievable. Changing gears now, you ask another question in your special about the opioid crisis. I love the way you put this. You said, is the opioid crisis a brilliant marketing con job by billionaire villains? It's an interesting way to ask the question and make the point at the same time. I'm in North Carolina talking to you, and I think we're number 2 or 3 in victims of opioid abuse, and it's basically legalized, drug pushing, isn't it?
Yeah, 115 people a day are dying from it.
Wow,
it's really horrific. There's been nearly nothing done to stop it. Because it's the good kind of drugs, right? It's the big pharma drugs. So therefore it's allowable. And, meanwhile, you'll still see the villainization of marijuana, which is killing a whole 0 people a year. However, I got to say, every time I run around saying that, I feel a little bad for the families of those 0 victims. I do. That really hits hard. Those are someone's husbands and wives and kids that aren't dead right now.
Hanging out, eating chips and having smoothies and shit.
Yeah, but I call it a good marketing scheme. There's been a few articles about this. It's not something the mainstream media likes to harp on, but there's been a couple of investigative pieces on how did this happen? Well, we're one of the few countries that allow direct-to-consumer prescription advertising. So you can push it on people because guess what? Advertising works. If it didn't, they wouldn't spend billions of dollars on it every year. So advertising works like a charm. So back in the 90s, they realized that if they asked Americans if they suffered from something that most people kind of think we suffer from, then they could prescribe something that was highly addictive, say it's not addictive, and everyone would get hooked, and they'd make shit tons of cash. Back in the 90s, Purdue Pharmaceutical and some of the others came forward and started saying, hey, do you have pain? Now, here's the thing. There is some legitimate level of pain suffering that, yes, there's some people that need opioids, and I want them to get their medication. But whatever the percentage is, 80, 90% of us that don't really have that kind of pain and go, yeah, I have a lot of pain. You know what? My job sucks. My husband's ass is the size of an aircraft carrier. My kids are dumb as rocks. Yeah, I got a lot of pain. Give me pills. Give me pills. And it was highly addictive. They were going around to doctors saying oxycodone or whatever is not really addictive. It doesn't have the problems of opium or heroin. And they just got tons of people hooked on it. And no one was counting the bodies that were stacking up.
Wow.
And now what happens is people eventually have to get off the legitimate prescription pills and they then go to the street versions, and that'll kill you pretty quick.
Yeah. To push it on folks, everybody's got a little pain. And, it's not just the advertisers, of course. Doctors are pushing that stuff on people. A lot of politicians made a lot of money off of that, too.
I know the campaign contributions, and, that gets to the heart of how our system is rigged. If you're paying the biggest contributions, they're not going to make any laws against you. So, and that speaks to big banks, big pharma, big ag, all of them, even big sugar. They have a stranglehold on our government.
Yeah. Speaking of big ag, you refer to factory farming of animals as torture farming. And you've explained on your weekly show how animal agriculture is also a leading cause of climate change and mass species extinction, that we're on the brink of global environmental catastrophe. Is that what you referred to in your comedy special, living in a matrix for dummies? Who are the dummies? All of us, or who are you talking about there?
I'm talking about how it's a false reality we live in. And, I give a lot of funny examples in my special, such as expiration dates. Most of them don't mean anything. And yet 40% of all food in America goes to waste. It's a false scarcity we live under. Everybody could be fed. Everybody could have a roof over their head. As of a few years ago, there were 6 boarded up, foreclosed upon houses in this country for every homeless person. So, my argument was always, all right, well, you don't want to give 6 houses to each homeless person. How about just one? Let's just give them one of the foreclosed houses. But it speaks to the larger idea, which is we're kind of living in this false reality. And it's a false idea, the concept that we can abuse this many animals, produce millions stacked on top of each other, and it won't have environmental impacts. Ocean dead zones, pollution, and cutting down of all the forests. The oceans are filling with plastics. And yet we live in this false reality that they have built for us through advertising with unfettered capitalism and the corporations making all the profit from it. And by telling us that a hamburger is $1, that is a form of a matrix. It's a form of a false reality. It's delicious. It's $1. Go get it. When in fact, studies have shown if you accounted for all the externalities of that burger, if you accounted for the pollution, the raising of the cow, the water the cow drinks, the knocking down of the forest, shipping that burger back and forth across the country before it's served to you, a burger should cost $200. But no one would pay that. So we subsidize every level of it, and we put people in a matrix. The movie analogy fits on multiple levels. What's outside of the glorious false reality, the glorious matrix that our brains are in? Well, it's that dying world that, when Neo finally gets out and wakes up, he's in a gray, dying, miserable planet Earth. And that's where we're headed towards, is a $1 burger while the environment collapses around us.
Right on. I've seen you on your program talk about the recent studies that have been released. The latest one is 12 years now. You see how the numbers keep coming down, 2100, 2050. Now we're 12 years away. And there's another report that was released parallel to that says we're 12 years away from those issues, but we only have 3 years to stave off that.
So those years, I think some people confuse with the year in which basically the earth will be unlivable. I think that's when you hear the 2100, I think that's probably what people are referring to, or 2200 or whatever. But the 11 and a half years that the IPCC came down with is the point of no return for climate change. So once we hit 11 and a half years from now, if we continue on this path, it won't matter what we do. We will survive because humans are adaptable and we'll keep trying to survive for a while. But the planet will be on a spiral towards becoming a fireball. They believe that's in 11 years.
Yeah, been tracking that science myself. That's a big part of what our Awaken Justice campaign is about. It's reaching out to all the folks across the global justice movement that care about anything, whatever it is, that we're fighting for. With these problems coming at us on the road there to 11 and a half years or whatever the latest number is, on the road there's going to be a lot of misery and a lot of global insecurity, food insecurity, refugee crises are going to continue to expand. The thing that I remember most about the last live appearance I saw you at, which was at Asheville Vegan Fest, you were lecturing us vegans about...
Was I lecturing or encouraging?
You were encouraging, and you did it in a really cool way, actually. It was pretty inspiring the way you said it. You said something along the lines of, isn't it time we stop fighting on the corporatocracy's terms and start connecting with each other on our terms? And you went further and advised that we should all be working together, those of us who are fighting to protect animals, and that massive corporate animal system you were talking about, the massive amount of cruelty that happens in that system. 84 billion sentient beings every year being crushed under the burden of that mass mechanization of producing meat and dairy products. For those of us in the work, we see the results of it, the animals that we rescue, and it's stunning too. And that doesn't get discussed enough either in mainstream media or by politicians. But the advice that you gave us, acknowledging what we're all fighting for, justice for animals, justice for the environment, justice for human oppression. We should work with other causes like Black Lives Matter, you said, and women's rights and indigenous people's rights, environmental justice and economic justice advocates. And I should tell you that you inspired the tagline for our Waking Justice campaign, which is, we're all fighting the same fight. Let's fight together.
That's cool.
Yeah, so thanks for that. We all know that if we could just join together, we could overwhelm the corruption of the corporatocracy. That's what you call it, the corporatocracy. We could take back our power, help each other, and heal our planet. What is holding us back?
Well, boy, do you have an hour? Well, yes. There is a tendency to think the cause that you care most about is the most important one, and some may be, but also to kind of then push away those causes. We don't have time to deal with that because we're focusing on this. I think that divides us in a very nice and beautiful way for corporations. You know, as long as we're staying off in our little groups and not working together, divide and conquer is a beautiful policy for them. And, you know, let's be serious with any of these protests. If they get even remotely successful or strong, there will be infiltrators. There will be, you know, whether it's plainclothes cops that were at Occupy or a higher level infiltration, or it could just be a right winger that wants to screw your group up. You're going to have those. And if you've atomized yourself, there's not a lot to be able to fight back against that. But if you're a much larger thing with many, you know, levels and limbs and stuff, then it's a lot more difficult for a couple of people to upend it. But beyond just that, all our fights are really connected in the fight against profit over all else, putting money above lives and sustainability and health and caring for other sentient species. All of that at the root is putting a dollar sign over those things when there shouldn't be one. There are certain things that the market system should not apply. What's really interesting is if you look at some things in our own lives, things we really care about, and this goes for anybody, even a frothing at the mouth Trump supporter, your brother or something ends up in the hospital and you have to take care of his 4-year-old for 3 days while he's in the hospital. Now imagine he gets out of the hospital and you say, oh, I'm so glad you're all right. That'll be about $1,000. You know, I'm giving you a discounted rate, but it'll be about $1,000 for me to take care of your kid these past 3 days. Cash a check. He'd probably smack you across the face because there's certain things in our lives that we think are more important than putting a dollar sign over them. And that should go for more things than it does. That should go for the health of our planet. It should go for having clean water and clean food and roofs over our people's heads. And it is so many different things in our society that should have nothing to do with profit. Healthcare, for one. That unites all of our struggles. So those who want the profit, who want to extract all of the wealth out of every step of life and our societies, the fight against them and what they want unites all of these movements. So I truly believe that if your number one goal is to stop animal agriculture, especially torture farming, spend a lot of your time on that. And then when there's an anti-war protest, show up at that one too, because that military-industrial complex that's putting a dollar sign over the death of so many overseas, that's related to you fighting against the corporations. And these corporations are all linked too. You know, it's like 100 corporations run most of everything. But those corporations that are torture farming, it's the same fight at the heart of it. I'm not saying don't focus, but at times, but you should also work together.
Right on. You mentioned Trump supporters. There are folks who support Trump that are incredibly violent and bigoted and racist, et cetera. I'm in the deep South. My family's from the South. You're actually a Southern boy yourself.
Yep.
You probably, like me, have people in your own family who supported Trump, who are good people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were voting against the corruption that Hillary and her campaign represented. A lot of them were believing in a lot of the messaging that Trump was talking about.
Some even believed he was the anti-war candidate.
Wow, I missed that one. I could see that, yeah.
Long before he was running for president, he was tweeting that Obama shouldn't invade Syria, that he can't do it without approval of Congress. He used to tweet, must get approval of Congress. And apparently all that fell by the wayside. The white blood cells of our system attack an infection. Trump got into office and he said, oh, yeah, we're withdrawing the troops from Syria. And he told the Pentagon to plan for withdrawal. And within 9 days, the theory of a chemical attack that was never proven, and we had to get back in Syria, and he started bombing again, and we were all in it again. So they find ways to make sure that withdrawal and decrease in militarization has not happened at all.
Yeah, the they.
The big they. Yeah.
I think he got schooled on who the they were. I think the deep state that are running the military over there, I think they concocted all that. And it seemed almost like he was excusing the bombing almost after he learned that it was going to happen, whether he liked it or not. That was my sense of it. The poor guy, you know, he's going to start getting the Obama gray. I think those guys that get into office, some of them probably have some good intentions. And I'm sure Trump in his own mind thought he did.
I understand what you're saying, and I didn't mean to paint with too broad a brush. There are good-hearted people who were Trump supporters for various reasons. I believe from day one they were being misled, but I don't want to say that roughly 50% of the country that voted for Trump are assholes.
Well, I think the people that voted for Trump are all getting woke up, just like those of us who voted for Obama, you know, got woke up.
Yep.
You know, there's something across, you know, you were earlier talking about those folks that are supporting global justice causes. There are also folks right of center who support economic justice, fair wages, clean environment, and they get climate change. And I think this left-right idea is possibly part of the problem also. I think there is a layer of causes that are about just global justice across the spectrum that people from those so-called left and right camps can join together. Look, Martin Luther King was talking about doing this. My final questions. Did you vote in the midterm election?
I did, because as I say in my comedy special, I talk about how rigged and ridiculous our voting system is. It's a large Harvard study called it the worst in the Western world. We vote on black box machines that with proprietary corporate code that no one's ever allowed to see. It's egregious, but I think we have to vote in such numbers that we overrun, swamp what's stolen. In a lot of local races and local ballot initiatives and things like that, you can have a big impact. So I still vote despite being very angry about the system we have.
As your colleague, Chris Hedges, says, all levers of democratic reform have now been completely corrupted by the corporatocracy. We've lost all our power. You are right to point out that we still have to keep trying through the political system, but I think it's another area where we're continuing to try to work at something that's never going to work for us. And that's why I wanted to ask you, we still have the power of our consumer dollar. And if we're talking about what the enemy is, getting past the they and the big money and you know, terms like corporatocracy or plutocracy, or what are all the terms? I wish all you cool pundits out there that really get this shit, I wish y'all would come up with one term so I could talk to my children about it. Because they say, is that the same thing as the plutocracy, or is the corporatocracy something different? And who are the oligarchs?
Right.
But can you and Abby and Eleanor and Jimmy and all y'all get together and come up with a single term and let us know? And we'll start using it.
I know. I find I use whichever, you know, flavor I'm feeling that morning. At times I'll use corporatocracy. At other times I'll talk about the oligarchy. And at other times I'll talk about the kleptocracy, the rule by thieves.
Yeah. Well, it is pretty clear when I saw you back in Asheville over the summer, and I talked to you about the research that we've done for this campaign, actually, where we looked at the top 5 or 6 companies in every major industry, big pharma or big oil or big chemical or big defense or big meat and dairy or big banks. And what we found by looking at who their major stockholders were, just 4 major hedge fund companies owned controlling shares in every major company across every major industry.
Wow.
And all that means, it's not some Illuminati bullshit. It's just that a couple of hundred billionaires are controlling all this shit.
Yeah,
you know, it's the oligarchy.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the ones they don't control, if something starts to happen at them that is unsettling to those interests, they have enough money to buy it out and stop. I mean, that's what we're seeing with a lot of the media. I mean, why does Jeff Bezos, who has so much going on, need the Washington Post? Well, he just wants a media arm to give his talking points out there. And Sheldon Adelson realized that the newspaper in Las Vegas was a real thorn in his side, so he bought it out, and now he owns it. Even for the things that they don't own, if it becomes a problem, they will own it.
They'll buy it. You know, what they can't own is you. You're an independent, and there are other independent journalists out there. And by the way, the top, the stat, everybody knows it now, 90% of media in the United States is owned by just a handful of major companies. And by the way, those 4 hedge funds have controlling shares of all the major big media companies as well. Right. So this is locked in. A few hundred billionaires. The power is so concentrated. And we're talking about the top 1% of wealth in the world is controlling all major industries. And these are also the folks that are controlling the advance of global animal agriculture that's driving mass species extinction and climate change. That's that 12-year window you're talking about. So if we can't fight them with politics and through the political system, especially within that tight time frame,
sure,
the one bit of power we do have left is how we spend our consumer dollar. Mm-hmm. And do you think that ultimately Gandhi and even King with the bus boycotts, do you think ultimately we have to resort to a consumer revolt and start pooling our money and spending it to take these folks on and be a bit more strategic and aware of what the real fight is?
Well, I do think that is one of the most powerful tools that activists have is the divestment movements. Divesting from big oil has had a major impact, and they've had real success, 350.org and such, and pushing big banks to divest their investments from these massive oil pipelines. It can cause a real headache to some of these big corporations. I also think that can't be the only push or the only activist element. A lot of these corporations own things and you don't really know what they own. Trying to avoid a certain name brand, some of that works. Like I don't buy Nestle, but a lot of them own things that you don't even know it's connected to this other thing. And you have endless advertising. The estimates are we take in between 1,000 and 3,000 ads and brand names a day. And that's all pushing us to buy those things. So our voice telling people not to buy a certain name brand is like a mouse squeaking at an avalanche. I still think it's an important tool. I think some of the biggest change we've seen has come through divestment from big oil or divestment from the war machine. Code Pink is a new mission they've created, divestfromthewarmachine.org. It talks about whether your investments, your pension or your 401k is in companies that are basically keeping these weapons contractors going.
Yeah, right on. I know that you're a student of history.
Yeah.
The great middle class programs that made America great during the Roosevelt era, 40-hour work week and Social Security, and et cetera, et cetera. When working class folk like us think about what makes our country great, and this is on the left and the right side, including that group of Trump supporters we were talking about, when they think about that, it seems like history has become so sanitized about how that actually happened, as if the great oligarch Roosevelt, who was a great president, no doubt, he had to make those changes because people were out fighting in the streets, getting bloodied up and killed. I'm not advocating violence. I am advocating what they were after, which was they were shutting down massive commerce. Chris Hedges spoke in Asheville a couple of years ago on a similar topic. I asked him, what do you think is the right solution here if the political system is so broke? And he said, we need to take to the streets. And what I didn't get a chance to ask him was, and do what?
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, when he had great breakthroughs, he had 2 great breakthroughs. He led bus boycotts in Montgomery and somewhere in Florida. Those bus boycotts were very effective. They were able to help him move a lot of progress forward. Gandhi with the textile boycotts and the salt boycotts. Those were all consumer boycotts that were led by charismatic leaders.
Yeah, and it's why Israel finds the BDS movement so threatening. They tried to put through laws through Congress that are aimed probably at the BDS movement, but at the same time, it would make a lot of forms of protest illegal. I mean, it's completely anti-American to say you can't advocate for not putting your money in an organization. It's laughably against free speech and everything. To your point about Chris Hedges saying take to the streets, and then you didn't get to ask him, and do what? Those and do what steps are very important because you see a lot of marches. Some of them you'd be shocked with the numbers. The Women's March after Trump got elected was the biggest national march we've seen ever in terms of sheer numbers of people coming out into the streets. But if it show up for 3 hours and hold a kind of vague sign and wear your pussy hat and then go home, well, what does that really do? Trump goes out, play golf, and then he comes back later to do what he's doing. You got to have further steps. Let's go march. Let's go and do this. And then we're going to go home and we're going to do this and this and this. Eleanor Goldfield, he loves to mention a woman at the Women's March that had a sign that said, if Hillary had won, we'd be at brunch right now. That woman was holding that sign like, wouldn't that be great? And
Exactly.
Eleanor's point was, exactly. If Hillary had won, you'd be at brunch right now. And all of this pillaging would just go on. instead, at least we're talking about it. I mean, the idea that we should be at brunch right now is terrible.
No doubt, man. Obviously, an Obama supporter that woman must have been. I just read a day or two ago, the greatest transfer of wealth from the working class to the top 1 or 10% happened during the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And that more bombs were dropped on civilians than any other administration during the Obama administration.
You average out over his 4 years, Bush was averaging 30 bombs a day. And then Obama upped it to 40-some bombs a day. Now, a lot of this could just be a gloves off of the military-industrial complex kind of view on things, and so they're going to keep ramping up their bombing. But, yeah, Obama bombed more per day than Bush did, and now Trump, it's up to like, near 100 or whatever a day. So, and now it's increased again. Obama deported more immigrants than ever before, and I'm sure Trump will top that. Obama used to brag about how he laid more oil pipeline than basically any president had. He would say in front of oil-favorable audiences, we've laid enough oil pipeline to wrap around the earth 3 times. And this is the guy who was good on climate change?
Exactly. Yeah, so Eleanor's right. We don't want those people going back to sleep. We do need to figure out what's next. It seems like we're in a space right now, and great commentators that are really looking at the truth, like Hedges and yourself and Eleanor and Abby Martin and Caitlin Johnstone does great work, Jimmy Dore. It seems like we're at a phase right now where we're saying, look at how fucked up everything is. Look how corrupt it is. Here's an example of how corrupt it is. Here's what's happening in XYZ and ABC. You see how corrupt it is? I told you so. Tune in next time, and we're going to look at more fucking corruption because it's really a mess out there. That's not a criticism. I think we all do need to wake up, including that woman holding that sign and wanting to go to brunch. I think the what next thing, the other side of your point about it can't be just about consumer revolt. It can't just be about politics either, because that's not getting us anywhere. We need to figure out the other aspects, and we do need to work together across the way Huey Newton was talking and Martin Luther King was talking about how we can create a broader coalition of folks that can help us move this forward. I don't know what that means. I'm just putting it out there. I'm looking forward to hearing what's next, and I know you're going to be right on the edge of finding it out. So,
I hope so.
You're out there, bro. You're out there. You're doing the great work, man, and really appreciate all that you've done in your career. And you're very generous, including this awesome special you're giving it away for, what, $4 or $5, making a nickel off of it, maybe?
Yeah.
So one more time, that is LeeCampComedySpecial.com.
Yeah, and that's the only place to get it. It's not on any television channel or anything. So.
Yeah. So I hope the folks that are listening will go out and pick that up and share it. Wish there was some way I could buy that and give it to friends for Christmas. If you work that out, let me know, bro.
Actually, we're putting together, funny you should ask, a gift option.
Nice.
That will allow you to gift it to someone for like $2 or something.
Oh, and, everybody's getting that one.
The promo code is Uncle Sam, one word. So
Uncle Sam, one word, lowercase, uppercase, doesn't matter?
Shouldn't matter, I don't think.
Okay, so Uncle Sam, put that in the promo code and you get a really great deal on it, and you help a great guy out, keep his work going. So we're out of time, Lee. Thank you so much for being on this first show of ours. It means a lot to us because you really helped inspire this campaign with your guidance and humor and grit. Hope your new special gets all the viewership it deserves.
Thank you, Paul.
And right on, man. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you down the line. Maybe we can come back in a year or less, hopefully. We don't have that much time. Maybe we can come back and talk about whatever those next steps are in the revolution.
Absolutely, man. Keep fighting.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Rate it and share us far and wide. If you appreciate how we're seeding the revolution of change, support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/wakingjustice. Next week, our guest is an important voice in the movements of both anti-racism and anti-speciesism, Dr. Amy Breeze Harper. For info on this and more, visit wakingjustice.org.
If it's about love, if it's about justice is waking, justice is rising, justice is waking, justice is rising, if it's about love, justice is rising, and injustice is all over. If it's justice is waking, justice is rising, and injustice is all of us. If it's about
may every soul unite, tend the fire and let old coals relight. I'm a citizen of the world, and we fight for the rights of everybody to live a truly free life. Red or yellow, black or white, left or right, gay or straight, human or animal, all life. you know it, stand tall and keep dropping the knowledge.
Justice is waking, justice is rising, and it ain't just us, it's all of us.
If it's about love.